Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast presented by Planet of One. This podcast is designed to inspire change in people to become the best versions of themselves and live their best lives. We share stories of struggle and success to encourage and empower listeners to be bold, take action, and be the change we desire to see in this world. We are all part of this planet. We are all a planet of one. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Attitude of Altitude. I am so thrilled to have with us today Beth Handler, who is a great friend of mine and executive producer, has been in this industry for a lot of years, has gone through numerous degrees of expansion, contraction, and then expansion again. And I really wanted Beth to give us her wisdom and her drive of how she got to where she is and the things that she's working on now for change makers. So please help me welcome Beth. Hi, Beth. How are you?
Hi, Rima. So nice to be on your show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I am so thrilled to see the new things that you're putting out there, even bigger and better. Would you let the audience know a little bit about your background, where you started, some of who you are that makes you the change maker yourself and what you're doing today?
So, good question. What makes us a change maker? I mean, I guess that's really, my brand is, it's the change maker. I'm working on a series that I'm bringing to Netflix. And this whole work, I think, really our passion work, and this is such a passion project for me. It starts off with the healing of a wound, I should say, with my story. And as I think we grow and we learn from bad things that happened so that we then, can really express it. And for me, my big wound was the loss of my twin brother to cancer when we were 19. And it just, my adult life has been with that perspective of death and grieving. And it wasn't until about 5 years after he passed when it was Thanksgiving, and my girlfriend, a couple of days before Thanksgiving, said, why don't you come with me and my dad? We're going to go feed the homeless. And I said, oh, well, okay. And then I was thinking in my heart, well, maybe I'll feel better because, I was really the walking dead for a long time. I just was like, well, and I was looking for my heart. I really wanted my heart back. And so before we left, so it was Thanksgiving morning. Before we left, I turned on the TV and I'm like, oh my God, that's where we're going. It was actually on TV and she didn't tell me. So I jumped in the car, drove with her and her dad, and it was cold, and it was, DC can be very cold and rainy, and it was probably low 40s, wet. And we got to the Washington Convention Center, and oh my gosh, I walked in, and right away they asked, does anyone want to be a greeter? So I raised my hand and I said, sure, why not? And I guess that was my spot. I went right into literally just as when I arrived, people walking in from the cold, wet streets, wet and cold, and the line really turned around and went all the way around. And I was on the front line, and oh my gosh, I was awkward at first, hugging people, and then it was just person after person after person, and I just didn't go off that line, and hugging again and hugging again, and I just started getting my love back, and I started getting this connection with humanity in such a powerful way. And it's like that pain and suffering that I had experienced for so long, it was coming off of me with each hug. And my whole life transformed. It's like I found love, hugging the homeless, and just changed my life completely. And that's why the homeless activist that led that organization led me to my heart again. It just totally opened up my life. And when you're in deep grief and you're suffering, the world, you don't even see it anymore. It's like it's like you don't have any, you don't see anything. You don't see the colors, you don't see the flowers, you don't see, you're just comatose. And so I came out of that event just ignited, like I didn't expect it. And I ended up serving with Whoopi Goldberg and Valerie Harper and Cher and Martin Sheen. They were there. And I guess it started my world in a way that saw me see uh, that people that have influence can also influence the greatest part of humanity, and blending them, because that whole event led me back to my heart and led me back years later now to really committing. Like, I know change makers, there's something profound about being a change maker, about standing up for others, about feeling humanity's pain and suffering and creating solutions for it. And it doesn't even have to be, something nonprofit. It can be anything, but things where people are in need and change makers. So I kind of fell in love with the change makers. So,
Beth, you hit on something that's so major, from losing your twin, and anyone who experiences a personal loss of some kind, where they go into this feeling, and I've been there, like you lost your heart, you lost your soul, you lost who you are. And it's a really tough space for a lot of people. And it took you showing up for someone else at an event that literally began to change your thoughts and bring you back to who you are, to allow you to go down a different path. But at the same time, what was the biggest thing at that event that made you come back to the love and who you are? Was there something specific, anything in that event that you go, that's what drew me out? That's what helped me come out?
well, I think from giving hugs for, I don't know, 2 hours, unstoppable love, wanting to make sure that they were loved. It's like I came out of my own circumstances, because I think in grief and in loss, we get self-consumed and we forget that there's people outside of us. So I would say, the hugging consistently. And then, it was really fun to go serve the meal. So I'm, serving potatoes next to Whoopi Goldberg was very cool. I didn't expect, I knew coming out of the house that morning, like, oh my God, there's celebrities at that event. Well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. But there was equality. Our number one thing was to show and be love and to be a family, and like the whole humanity. I think there were 4,000 people that ended up being fed at that event. It was really big, but they walked into home. And I think that when we experience a transformation, a very big one, going from loss to living again, there is this feeling and this desire to come back home to yourself. Home starts from one's self. So I got home. I got back to home. We're talking 5 years later. It finally dropped. Home dropped, and then I took off.
How did you take off? I'm glad you just kind of went from there. How did you take off?
Oh my gosh. Well, I ended up, I actually became a publicist with this nonprofit organization. After this event, I actually found clothes, and I delivered the clothes to the activist. His name is Mitch Snyder. And then I was like, this really important man, he's brought all the celebrities, and I'm like, just my heart's open and I want to serve. So I dropped a bag of clothes, and I was let in, and how can I serve? How can I help you? So I actually, I helped him by producing the news conferences. There was a few of those, which I'd never done before. I ended up um, I ended up recruiting celebrities for him as well. I did really corporate sponsorship, celebrity development, and anything. I spoon fed chips of ice when they were fasting. What I really discovered about the activist, the activist change maker will put their body up front ahead. And I remember there was a really important bill in Congress they were really committed to. And with activists, that always ties to a bigger call for many. And Mitch Snyder and Carol Fenley, the two activists I was working with, literally were starving themselves to change a bill. And it was so profound to literally be the one with the news and the media outside the door. This was in Tacoma Park in Washington. And, spoon feeding, this Gatorade water that had the right kind of liquid to come back. And then I ended up moving to California. I actually jumped into recruiting celebrities, and I literally left everything in DC and moved out here and actually launched a grassroots movement that turned into 113 celebrities participating in this Housing Now March. And the march itself, there were 250,000 people that were marching. And I spent about 9 months getting celebrities involved. They got involved with the press, and I became a core member of a celebrity grassroots movement. There was a group of us. It was really powerful. And what I could see, the power of people that had influence, that could step up and make a difference for others. In this case, it was changing the whole idea of homelessness and to put money back into the budget. The homeless mentally ill used to have a home in institutions, and they closed all the institutions, and then everyone came out of the institutions, and all these people became homeless. And they're going now between the jails and the streets right now, because we don't have the facilities that we once had. So they were on a stand around housing for low income. So it's just so powerful to see in that first case how a change maker could could literally engage thousands and thousands of people and use the idea of celebrity to get the news out, to get the media out. So ultimately I ended up producing talk shows on Good Morning America and on the top national talk shows for the cause. So it was, what a way to get out of my dread, my grief, was really to come out the other side. And in the end, working with Mitch and Carol, it turned into this entire engagement of celebrity with the homeless and housing cause, and fighting for a bill which didn't get passed. But I saw the power when you mix Congress and you mix and the political world with celebrity, with a cause in the middle, is very, very, very powerful to engage people.
What was the draw to you to become an executive producer and start putting out content? Because you've been in this industry for a long time. What was the draw to you to continue in that field?
Well, I got into advertising. I got into television advertising, and got and as an executive and spent 25 years, frankly, selling ads, and I got into the ad business. But at the same time, I kept working with nonprofits. I kept working with activists. So while I was also doing television sales and cable, I just love the activist, So I ran into an activist who had just moved from Africa. His name was Dr. Paul Zeitz, and he quit a top UN position orchestrating the AIDS response in Africa. But after witnessing 40 death marches in his home in Zambia, he quit. And I had met him 3 months after he had come into Washington, the Washington D.C. area, and then took on the global AIDS movement and helped him launch his first big event. And we brought leaders together. So the change makers, I found myself in life's work, my life's work, like then becoming the publicist, PR, the building relationships, and the Global AIDS Alliance. We hosted all the top leaders fighting the AIDS response, as well as celebrities. So as well as people that were the head of the AIDS response at Harvard, the whole student movement of the ACT, the whole. So from there, there were multiple causes. I worked with Willie Nelson and his cause being FarmAID, and interviewing him and going to FarmAID, and I brought an internet proposal to how to bring more people, how to leverage celebrity with a bill with the public. So this has kind of been an ongoing flow, and I decided that in our world right now, there is such a need for change makers, people that are finding their voice. And so my goal is to give them a platform that they can get their voice out in a super powerful way, directly to the people that need to hear them, and give them the celebrity that they need to get their constituents and to get their causes to be known in the world. So I guess that's why when I look back at what have been the most passionate moments of my life, it has been launching activists and their work in the world, and to see the impact ultimately down the line. So recently I interviewed the founder of Black Lives Matters, for example. Now with change makers, I've been at Sundance Film Festival. There's a ton of activists, in the film business. And so now I'll be covering Sundance this upcoming January as well. So I've been grabbing activists that are entertainment activists, and filming. So change makers coming up has led me to interview people from the founder of Black Lives Matters, Patrisse Cullors, who's just an amazing woman, to the founder of even the driverless car, Tom Chi, who says in life about life, because he invented the driverless car. His interview was just so profound. He's like, sometimes you just have to follow your heart and what to do in the moment. We sometimes don't know what to do. Because we just don't know the service to humanity changes. So I love in the activist change maker field the many people that I've run across and the many people that I've interviewed, and that's what I'm bringing to change makers. Really, I have about 40 really powerful interviews that I'm developing as stories, and then tracking the new activists. The 14 to 15-year-olds, the new Gen X, it's the Gen Zs that are coming forth. They are seeing the world like I saw in my early 20s. There is a need for activists to have a voice, and I want to give them that platform and empower their voice, because our world things only change through the change makers.
So profoundly said. And you said something also so key: follow your heart. A lot of people are always looking, and they don't step into their power and follow their heart and take action. You have taken a lot of action through your years in the various projects that you've worked on, because you have worked on some incredible projects, and you've only mentioned a few of them, but you've also been through some really tough times on a personal level. How has that impacted you as a change maker in the things that you're bringing forth today, in the different programs that you're really putting out there? How has that changed you? What were some of the things that you've grown through yourself to be who you are?
Well, I think we're put on this planet for lessons, and then for us to go through the woods, the dark night of the soul, to come out, and then to truly get grounded in our power. And my power was very much challenged after my twin brother passed. The man I married ended up to have an issue with opiate pills. His doctor had prescribed them. He had a neck problem, and it turned into a full-blown addiction. And getting him into rehab, he came out of rehab, and I had a violent man on my hands, and I had to deal with domestic violence, and I had to deal with a 3-year-old watching his father, just be out of control, frankly. And so I had to flee with my son, and I had to spend years. I spent 16 years in and out of court with him. I should say there was a couple of years in between that we had peace, and now we have peace. We're past all of that. But I would say going through marriage with someone who ultimately became a drug addict in front of me and then became aggressive and took that aggression through the courts. So what I learned is the resilience and power that I have. During that time, I told you I was in advertising. So I had to keep my son grounded while I also stayed at home because I had to deal with this really heavy duty litigation. It wasn't just my ex, my son's father. It was my father-in-law. I think domestic violence can be multi-generational. And I witnessed that with my son's father and his grandfather. And what we lived through and what we now are living through, because now we are a family again, we're beyond it. But I think what strengthened me was knowing that beyond a shadow of a doubt, I had to raise my son in a way that he would not be impacted by the aggression he witnessed. So moving and taking my business on the road, so to speak, because during that period of time, I want to say, I think during a 4-year period, we had about 14 moves, and I started my television business as an independent, but I ended up selling 33 million plus TV ads. So I built a product with the urge of, oh my God, I have to keep my son safe. And when you're in litigation, you have to respond, having so much. So now that I'm on the other side of it, thank goodness, I know that you can get through anything. And if you have a death of the most important person in your life, if you've got domestic violence and you've got drug addiction in your life, if you have to, take a child and be on the run, I know I've been through all of that. And somehow what kept me always grounded was my vision and commitment towards empowerment. I was always like, if I could just stay empowered, if I went down, because there were such dark times, but I never wanted my son to see the worst of his father. So I kept as much as I can. I kept my son in a bubble, and it really was. It made it work so well. He loves his father. He doesn't have the negative scars that many families that go through this go through. But thankfully, oh my God, we're past it. And
I love the thinking and that you were always aware of the empowerment piece. No matter what was happening, you weren't crumbling and falling apart. You always picked yourself up and were looking for the empowerment, even to what you're doing today. So let us know some of the programs you're working on today as the executive producer, some of the change makers and all the things that you're actually working on. There's a lot that you're building up.
Yes, well, I'm building. I've about 40 interviews, so I'm actually building a series of shows that really address the change makers. So this idea of women standing in their power. That I was so blessed to be able to be backstage at one of the last women's marches and being on the ground at Sundance when the Harvey Weinstein documentary hit. and the Me Too movement being so strong, given my history of keeping it together with a child during such a heavy blow, and having my own Me Too experiences with others, frankly. I was I was chased around a desk by a member of Congress in my earlier days, having gone to an event with a prominent man, and I didn't realize the expectation was something more, which, I'm like, oh my God, I ran. I didn't let him. But so what I'm doing now is really creating programs for women to stand in their power, for change makers to be a part of a community where they can really get into their power and grow. And then I'm launching another series that's called From Fear to Freedom. And that's really tied to the domestic survival stories, From Fear to Freedom, domestic survival stories, really giving those programs, giving women a way out, clarity on what to do if they're facing domestic violence. So through my Changemakers platform, through WeWorld TV, WeWorld TV being a platform, what I'm really committed to is producing programs that give the human experience, but give the empowerment side of it. Because we could stay stuck. And so my work with WeWorld TV is really having a platform that can be available anywhere in the world through mobile, and also on Roku and on Amazon Fire TV and on Apple TV, the programming that makes a difference, that gets people connected in a community. And I'm standing that my Changemaker show hits the Netflix platform, so that collectively between both the platform that can be available anywhere on mobile and having 195 million people that I can actually speak to through the Changemakers, that collectively between an online platform and the content being all over, that the needs of the progressive, the needs of the Changemakers are, we have a place to go to connect and to be, especially those women that are going through tough times, those women that maybe are stuck in a bad relationship and they don't know how to get out, that the programs that I'm committed to, bringing forth would give them that clarity on what to do. Yeah.
Beth, would you like to elaborate for us on, we hear the word influencer these days a lot in social media. Elaborate on what a change maker is versus what an influencer per se is, and whom have you seen as change makers from your lifetime that have really impacted?
Well, the influencers versus the change makers. Influencers are more they'd be like the online celebrities. They have a big following. They might have created some, they have a channel, they have a following, but they are different than the change maker. The change maker is more of the activist. It's the one that will stand up in their power, and they see what needs to transform in the world. They see what's not working and they're transforming it. So that's very distinctly. So for example, the Dr. Paul Zeitz that I helped launch with the Global AIDS Alliance, there was a pandemic in Africa going on. He watched death marches happening. And, in Africa at the time with the AIDS, they thought a man being with a virgin would cleanse himself with AIDS if he slept with a virgin. The misinformation. So the power of Paul's vision, and I was so grateful to be literally his first consultant with his vision when he was searching, what do I do next? And bringing all the change makers that were also dealing with wanting to change the response of AIDS, turn this transformation into President Bush getting involved, a bill in Congress passing, Bono got involved, Alicia Keys got involved. The whole issue of the AIDS in Africa became a global project, and it ended. The pandemic of AIDS ended in Africa because a change maker saw the vision that it had to change, and it did. And so I'm so blessed. Another person I met recently, for example, is Lorena Bobbitt. I just filmed her at Sundance. I'm going to her to be in my change making as an extended interview. But watching her now, her life, if you don't know her story, maybe you do. You know, she went through a horrific marriage with a very brutal man who sexually raped her and abused her over a very long period of time. And her story hit the press. I mean, she did an unspeakable act that most men cringe and women can't believe she did. And it hit the press in 1993 and was the hot news for months. And she put the face on domestic violence and sexual assault and sexual rape, as you know, and she was the change maker. She had to stand up. But some people become change makers and they don't mean to be change makers. She couldn't stand the rapes and the sexual and the domestic violence abuse. And now, you know, because of her standing up, because of her, there's women that can now, you know, bills in Congress have been passed. There's the Violence Against Women's Act that transformed. And I would say she's probably the first woman that was really known, that the press knew. And unfortunately, a lot of people joked about it. But in the end, her story is on Amazon Prime. And I was very grateful to meet her. She was a change maker. Another change maker I met was Willie Nelson and his commitment for the farmers. And so being able to hear his passion and hear what he's up to. So the honor of interviewing him and for him to put a nonprofit together, FarmAID, that continues to this day doing annual events to bring the plight of the farmers. So that's the change maker. Change makers see what's possible when others can get involved. And there is a host, like Alicia Keys got involved with the whole AIDS movement. She stood up for the children, one child at a time. But there's so many, you know, it's the celebrity that wants to make a difference. That's change makers. It's the influencer that says, you know what, I have this influence, but you know what? I see this problem in the world. I could use my influence to then become a change maker. So that's, you know, it's one is influence for oneself and one is a change maker to take this life, that what you've been given, and take it to that next level, because your legacy, you can make a difference, is what I believe.
Love the explanation, because there's so many people out there in our current world that believe an influencer is a change maker, but they are definitely radically different in somewhat their core of who they are and what they're desiring and what they see for the world. So for you yourself, you're definitely a change maker. Since I've known you, you are definitely one heck of a change maker. How do you see your vision of where you would like yourself to be and where the world is heading through all these interviews and programs that you're putting out there so that people can be enlightened? Where do you see yourself?
Well, I see myself definitely having a Netflix show that's global, that gets people ignited into what's occurring in the world. So with this Netflix show featuring these change makers, then those change makers have a home on We World TV. And We World TV right now is an app. And it is an app that can be downloaded anywhere in the world on Apple or Android. Or I should say, the point of this recording, it's not active. It is just about to be active. But the idea of the show reaching global, over right now, this recording 195 million subscribers, being able to give those change makers a platform to share what they have going on in the world, to then be able to not only feature them on a show, but then have them on an active platform, which is We World TV. and to have them be able to then truly impact and truly also receive what they need. Because people want to be able to give, they want to be able to participate. So in my world, I'm kind of bridging together the technology of the phone and mobile and the idea of being able to be global with now the new tech that's here, with this platform of We World TV, with programming that has a global audience and marrying the two together. And then what would be possible if then these change makers have a place to share their voice strongly and a place for people to participate with them in programs. So on We World TV, not only will it be hosting live programs with these change makers, so people that see them on Netflix can then go to We World TV and really be part of what's going on, and then more intimately get engaged and get involved is what I'm marrying together through just, through an app, through a simple app. And so anyone, anywhere. And what calls for me is when people are suffering, that they just click the We World app and the support is just a click away. And especially when we're speaking of women that are even dealing with really harsh issues that are violent, that are aggressive, that they have a place to go to get support and to get help. That's what Beth, I see. We World.
What I'm seeing, and I hope the listeners are hearing this and seeing this, you're in constant evolution. You're putting out a program, you're going into platforms that are large to give people access, but you're in constant evolution yourself. Your app is still in work. You don't stop to do the app as you work on other things. You're still continuing to grow in multifaceted ways and not stopping to just perfect one thing at a time. And the reason I'm saying that is so many people don't even begin because they don't have it all perfect. You're willing to step up and put it out and really let it grow. Isn't that how you became who you are today?
I would say absolutely. I am self-made. I'm a self-made woman, figuring it out as we go along. And I would say that I have fought perfectionism, and I've come to this point of my journey. It's like it has to get out. There's no choice. It has to get out. But when we're creating and we're creators, sometimes the timing isn't quite right. So I know that in some of my journey, the timing just wasn't right. The vision came ahead, like it came ahead, and I start working on the vision, and then it's not quite ready. So, and I just want to say with creators, sometimes you have to sit on things for a little while before they are ready to come out. And then all of a sudden, the flow is happening now. I am in flow now. Things are happening. Things are flowing. And it took a long time to get here. It took some time to get here. Now the flow is happening. Now also I can hear those that I am serving. I hear their calls. I can hear humanity speaking to me. And I think when, again, we get out of our heads, we get out of it having to be a particular way, but when we can step back and to really get into who we're serving and what do they need. And I know there's people suffering that want to be uplifted. They're tired of all the murderous things and the bad things, and the content that's available now so much doesn't speak to the soul. Well, I'm committed to having these stories speak to the souls of humanity, so people get inspired, like, oh my God, if they did that, I can do this, to kind of, so bringing that activism to the listener so that they get activated is what I dream of.
Beth, what is the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me best through my website, which is weworld.tv, or BethHandler.com, either way. But on my weworld.tv, that's www.weworld.tv. There's no .com. There is an entry screen to reach me and to put your information. And I would welcome any change maker to please reach out to me, and I'd be
Beth,
honored.
is there anything that you'd like to say that I may not have asked that you think the audience needs to hear or a change maker needs to hear? Is there anything that you'd like to end on?
Well, I'm just going to invite you to look within, to be the change maker that you always wished that you could be. That we all have a divine mission. We were all born for a reason. There's no waste in humanity. We all have something. And I invite you to listen to the answer of the prayers that people have about what you can give them. So that's really, we each are an answered prayer to someone asking for support. And if you can find that answer within yourself, I invite you to look in deep and to get meaning and to find your destiny. And that really, I think, is my ending, which is life is powerful when we can find the destiny that we are living, and that we can be the thread of humanity, our thread, our unique thread that intertwines with everyone else's threads, but we have our own. And I challenge each of you to find your thread of humanity, to empower everyone else around you, because there's something special
Beth,
in you.
thank you. Thank you so much for being here today, for taking the time and giving us a lot of your journey and the projects you're working on. I so appreciate you and love you. And to our listeners, thank you so much. Please remember, your attitude determines your altitude in life. If you want life to begin to change, check on your attitude and begin to impact and put yourself out there and really check in with yourself of how you're showing up in the world. Thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you at our next show. Have a great one. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.